Kijk, begint al met
Welkom allemaal bij deze presentatie van de vertaling van het boek van Ag Apolloni. Een sprankje hoop, een lont. Het programma bestaat uit verschillende onderdelen, die zal ik nu even toelichten. Op verzoek van de auteur wordt er eerst een hommage, een helder epos gedicht voorgelezen door de dochter van de vertaler, Jan Jansen en Lonneke Jansen. Die zal dus dit gedicht even voorlezen. En dat is dus een gedicht op Thompson, de kolonel Thompson, die in 1914 in Durres is gesneuveld. Dan daarna een korte inleiding van de ambassadeur van Kosovo in Den Haag, Drendoli. En dan daarna gaan we beginnen met het vraaggesprek tussen Jan, de vertaler, en Ag Apolloni. En dat wordt vertaald vanuit het Albanees, de antwoorden van Ag, door de vertaler in het Engels. Dus dat moet voor iedereen te volgen zijn. Oké, dan nu eerst het gedicht.
Okay. At the call, make haste one and all. Bear your rifle and powder, your knife and your sword, for the ominous dragon of night is abroad. The standards fly high, besmeared with our blood. From Shiak to Durres, they flow like the flood. Turkish this beast, on us it would feast, baffled by Bulgar, by Serb and by Greek. What else but Albanian blood must it seek? The slithering serpent would swallow us whole, lies on its lips and bile in its soul. But Thompson the Bold knew the dragon of old, when he, with his 400 souls, came to Flora. There with her throat in its claws he first saw her. Albania prostrated, trembled beneath, the chimera rampant, our soil in its teeth. In Durres again, he stood firm with his men, smiting the beast with his guns from the keep, pulling down a usurper into exile to creep. From mountain to dust, pride blown asunder by Thompson's strong fist, the just force of his thunder. The dragon had tumbled, ignominiously humbled, but regathered its strength, a host yet more harsh, advancing on Durres, to the bridge, to the marsh. Short-slighted Albanians gave up what they'd gained. Brother killed brother, flag and family were stained. Twice did I smite thee, knock down and afraid thee. A third time you defy me, revived, re-arisen, determined to have this fair land for your prison. One last time he charges, in the clutch of those claws, our guest and our champion, to die for our cause. From the call, do you flee, one and all? Flee you might, but not he, the chivalrous knight. The ravening dragon he puts to flight, eagle against monster, talon and claw. The bridge he has saved, while the cannon yet roar. At the call, make lament, one and all, for Thompson the hero, alone in the attack, though his doom was upon him, he would not pull back. When he rode us out for us to make this last stand, for you, oh you wretches, who love not this land.
Oké, dan nu het woord aan de ambassadeur van Kosovo in Den Haag.
Sorry, I have to disappoint you and I have to speak in English. My Dutch is not very well, so I have to continue my speech in English. First of all, thank you very much. Okay, that's better, huh? Okay. That's good. First of all, thank you very much all for coming. Today is a special day for Kosovo. We are celebrating the 15th anniversary of our independence. It is a special day also because we have a special book that we are launching today, which was written by our marvelous author, Ag Apolloni, and translated by Jan Jansen. I'm not the one who can assess the quality of the books, but I've read the book, and what was in Albanian language, I've read it. And what was very particular about the book was that I immediately connected. Probably because I come from a town where this part of this story develops, and probably because I'm from Kosovo and I could connect with that story. But even if I would have not known anything about Kosovo, the book is written in such a way that everyone can see and can read and can imagine the story that Ag develops. I don't want to keep you longer with my thoughts about the book, so once more I welcome you, and I hope you will be enjoying the book. We have some copies of the book, so you can have the book when the promotion is finished. Thank you.
Oké, een hele korte introductie. Ag Apolloni publiceerde het boek eerst bij zijn eigen uitgeverij Bart Books in Kosova. Daarna kwam er distributie door Scanderbeck Books in Albanië. Daar ben ik ook de uitgever van. En toen kwam Jan Jansen met het idee van ja, maar dat is zo'n geweldig boek over de oorlog en het drama van Kosovo in 1999. Dat verdient echt een vertaling in het Nederlands. En dus Jan Jansen is begonnen aan die vertaling en die vertaling is dus nu klaar en verschenen onder de titel Een sprankje hoop en lont. Het is een zeer indrukwekkend verhaal over de oorlog in Kosovo. Jan die zal in het Engels vragen stellen aan Ag Apolloni. En Ag Apolloni antwoordt in het Albanees, daar voelt hij zich toch wat makkelijker in. En dat wordt vertaald door de vertaler. Het duurt ongeveer een half uurtje. En misschien dat er daarna nog mogelijkheid is om wat vragen te stellen, dat zullen we zien. Zoals de ambassadeur al zei, na afloop stelt de ambassade aan de aanwezigen hier een exemplaar gratis ter beschikking om het werk van Ag Apolloni een goede boost te geven. En laten we hopen dat het een succes inluidt van een van de weinige Kosovaarse auteurs die in de Nederlandse vertaling tot nu toe zijn verschenen. Oké, het woord is aan Jan en aan Ag. En ja, ik hoop dat jullie er veel informatie uit halen.
Thank you. It's nice, Ag, to meet you here again and to be able to do this presentation together with you. So let's start. In the book you describe a trip with two friends to Jakova, and this trip starts at the cathedral in the new Roman Catholic Cathedral in Pristina, as where it ends also. Is there a special reason for to begin and end over there? Is there a symbolic meaning?
Thank you. Thank you for coming. I will start thanking my Richard for publishing my book, and Jan for translating. As one philosopher, German philosopher, said, the language is a house of being. I prefer to dwell in my language, so we can make this conversation in Albanian and in English with translate. Thank you.
The symbolism of the cathedral.
Katedralja ku nis romani është ka simbolikën e vet sepse quhet Nën Tereza. Romani flet për dy nëna shqiptare. Nën Tereza konsiderohet një nënë e madhe, nënë e botës, me epitetin nënë e botës. Prandaj romani fillon dhe mbaron katedralë.
So there is a symbolism in the beginning of this novel, because the cathedral where the novel begins is the cathedral named Mother Teresa, and the story is also about two mothers, and obviously Mother Teresa symbolizes the plight of mothers
Okay. The second thing that interested me very much is that you write in the beginning of the book a lot about Greek myths. Can you explain why this has such an important place in your book?
Unë fillimisht provova të shkruaj një dramë të bazuar në mitin grek, Niobe, Eskili. Dhe mandej e pash që ai mit ngjante me fatin, me tragjedinë e Ferdonias.
So initially, I was trying to write a book about Greek myth for Niobe from Eschil, and then as I was starting to write that, I realized that the story is very similar story with the Ferdonias story, which is described in this book.
Yeah, and I had an obsession with myths. Jam I obsesionuar me mitët dhe drama e Niobës është një dramë e humbur, kështu që unë vendosa ta restauroj.
And as I said before, I'm like obsessed with myths, and the play of Niobe, or the theme of Niobe, is a theme for all ages.
Dhe nëpërmjet këtij miti nxora ngjashmëritë, pash ngjashmëritë me fatin e Ferdonias.
And through this myth, I saw a lot of similarities with the fate of Ferdonia.
Kështu që e lash mitin dhe u mora me realitet.
So that's when I left this myth aside, I put it aside, and then I started to write about this reality.
Sikur Nioba në Greqinë e lashtë, në mitologji.
Just like Niobe in ancient Greece, in ancient Greek mythology,
edhe Ferdonia ka humbë të gjithë fëmijët në luftë.
also Ferdonia lost all of her children in the war.
Dhe mesazhi I krejt kësaj ishte se ku e gjeti ajo forcën të vazhdonte më tutje.
The entire message is about where did she get the power to continue throughout this. Yes.
Besoj që kam një pyetje.
I think you have a question.
Okay. These two women have been very much traumatized, but you three, you tell your own story in the car to each other, and I wonder, did one of you or all three of you also have a trauma from this war time?
Të gjithë ata që kanë përjetuar luftën kanë traumat e luftës. Edhe në tre që ishin në makinën me të cilën vizituam Gjakovën dhe Ferdonian.
So all the persons that survived, that went through war, all of them have some kind of trauma, including the three of us that were in that car at that moment, as we were driving or visiting Gjakova.
Historitë e tyre e dy bashkëpunëtarëve janë treguar aty, përfshi edhe historinë time. Njëra historia e gazit është histori me atë që quhet rulet rus. Historia e Dritanit është më shumë me kombet e shpërnguljes, që me trenin dhe me shpërngulje. Dhe historia ime që lidhet pak edhe me xhaxhain tim që e kanë vrarë.
So the three stories were
Historia e gazit.
So there are three stories involved. So of one of the characters, his name is Gazi.
Është një situatë ku ai në kokën e tij duhet rulet rus.
there is a situation described there that in his head there is a Russian roulette being played on.
Historia e Dritanit është ajo që lidhet me trenin e shpërnguljes dhe kampet e shpërnguljes.
The story of Dritan is connected with the trains that people had to leave Kosovo, that had to emigrate abroad.
Dhe historia e tretë që është historia ime si autor.
And the third story is my own story, which is as an author of the book,
Që lidhet pak a shumë me xhaxhain tim që kam lënë.
which is interconnected with the story of my uncle who was murdered during the war. Yes.
You've been to Jakova, and the region of Jakova and Drenica are known as a bit more rebellious than other parts of Kosovo. And the Serbs have committed awful crimes over there, war crimes, more as in other places in Kosovo. Do you think there is a connection of the Catholic belief that's especially over there in the region of Jakova, together, is that related to this rebellious and to the reaction of the Serbs?
It's a long debate. Është fakt që në Gjakov ka më shumë katolikë se në pjesën tjetër të Kosovës. Po kjo ndoshta nuk do duhet ishte arsyeja për sulm nga serbët.
So it is a fact that there are more Christians living in Jakova and in Jakova area, but that wouldn't or shouldn't be the reason why the Serbs would commit the most attacks there.
Sepse serbët përpiqeshin ta proklamonin këtë si luftë si luftë fetare, po ajo nuk ishte e tillë.
Because the Serbs was trying to proclaim the war as a religious war, but this wasn't a religious war.
Ata ishin pozicionuar si të krishterë, si perëndimor, dhe ne si na etiketonin si musliman, si lindor.
So their initial position was that they were like their position was as like Christians, and we, the Kosovo people, were labeled as the Muslims.
Po në fakt edhe pse mendoj se nuk ka arsye për inferioritet ose superioritet mes lindjes dhe perëndimit.
As a matter of fact, I think that there is no reason to have like an inferiority or superiority between East and West.
Ne shqiptarët jemi më perëndimor se serbët.
But we Albanians were more Westerner than the Serbs.
Sepse ne kemi edhe heronj edhe shenjtor të krishterë.
Because we have heroes and saints that were Christians.
Ndërsa ata janë lindor edhe si religjion, edhe si përkatësi nacionale.
And they are Eastern as a religion, but also as a nationality.
Pa lidhen me kishën ortodokse, që është kishë lindor.
So it's connected with the Orthodox Church, which is Eastern Church.
Dhe lidhen me Rusinë.
And of course they are connected or interconnected with Russia, which of course we know it's East.
So, is there a bit of religious fact in this war?
Nuk e di se sa duhet shihet ky element në libër, por gjithsesi ne këtu kemi një personazh musliman, si Ferdonia, dhe një personazh tjetër të krishterë, që është Pashka.
I don't know how much we should look into the book regarding this, but we have two stories or two persons there, two individuals. One that is of Muslim religion, which is Ferdinand, and the other one who is a Christian and like Pasha.
Yeah. Have you any idea why Pashka has chosen to kill herself while she had a couple of sons alive, and the other one, Fedonia, has decided to change her house into a museum while she had lost all her children?
Mm.
So they're totally opposite reactions, I guess.
It's Mr. But nuk di se si duhet të shpjegohet kjo. Ndoshta me fanatizmin, me besimin e tepruar që kishte Pashka në Zot, dhe ajo vazhdimisht beson që fëmijët e saj do të kthehen, pa besim ishte pa lëkundshëm. Ishte një grua fanatike në fe.
I don't know how this should be explained, but it might be explained with a fanatical belief in her religion that Pashka had at that time. So in a nutshell, yeah.
Dhe Ferdonia është më shumë një muslimane nominative muslim.
And Ferdonia is more like a nominative Muslim.
Si shumica në Kosovë.
Like most of Muslims in Kosovo.
Dhe besimi I saj nuk është aq I fortë sa besimi I Pashkës.
And her faith was not as strong as in comparison to Pashka.
Mendoj se ky mund të jetë shpjegimi vetëm.
I think that this could be the only explanation for that.
Okay. I found it a bit strange that the women in Kosovo didn't tell their stories about rapes, and it's of the last 10 years, I guess, 5 to 10 years that these stories are told, in contrast to Croatia and Bosnia, where they were immediately told. So there's quite a big difference between these reactions.
Në fakt, në Kosovë, menjëherë pas luftës, kemi rastin e një gruaje, Marta, që e ka denoncu për dhunusin e saj, serb.
As a matter of fact, immediately after the war, we have a story of a woman named Marta who denounced her Serb rapist at that particular time.
Përdonuesi ka qenë arrestuar nga Kfori, është sill para gjykatës, është dënuar, po pas 2 vitesh është lirë.
So the rapist was apprehended by the authorities. He was brought into courts. He was tried, and then after 2 years, he was released. It was released by the UNMIK, or UN mission in Kosovo at the time.
Unë në romanin e fundit, Kësulkuqja, e kam trajtuar temën e pardonimit.
In my last book that I wrote, the Red Hat, I
Riding Hood.
I talk about this subject, about the subject of the rape.
Do you think that there is a connection in the other reaction to rapes? Is there a relation with the canon, maybe?
Ne shqiptarët e Kosovës flasim pak, edhe kjo edhe lidhet pak edhe me kanon, ndërsa për tema të nderit, tema të ndërimit flasim edhe më pak.
We Albanians, we don't talk a lot, and especially with the themes that are like about, let's say, the rape or sexual violence or kanun and so on, we talk even less about those.
Po e di që kjo nuk është një temë shumë e këndshme edhe për perëndimin, për krejt botën e civilizuar, po nuk është një temë e zakonshme e darkave.
But I know that this is not a very pleasant subject to discuss about, even also like for our Western friends, and it's not a conversation that you have during the dinner.
Po si që thash, është folë për këtë rast me njëherë pas lufte, po nuk i është dhënë shumë publicitet rastit të Maltës. Mandej 2018 kemi rastin e parë të një gruaje që është rastin e parë publik, kështu që i është dhënë publicitet në media.
As I said, you know, in early days, there was like this case about Marta that wasn't publicized very much. And then many years have passed until 2018, where the first rape case was publicized and was all over the place.
Janë shkruar disa libra me rrëfime të grave dhe të burrave të përdoruar gjatë luftës. Po ato janë libra me ku personat që janë rrëfim kanë përdorur kod, jo
There were many books written about the male and female victims of rape that happened in Kosovo. But those books were usually not, they were like written, the names were never mentioned. So they were like they were used codes instead of names of those victims.
Yeah. Okay. This book is sold quite a lot in Kosovo, and so it has a influence. Do you think that will influence us as well in Holland? Does it has a message for us?
Po në Kosovë ka pas 4 botime, edhe në Shqipëri ka pas disa botime, mandej tash është botuar edhe këtu dhe po botuar edhe anglisht së shpejti, ndoshta muajin tjetër. Ka pas një interesim për librin, është shkruar për të dhe diskutuar.
So there were like in Kosovo, there were like 4 editions of this book, and there were like several editions in Albania. So there was like a lot of talk about this book in various places. So yes, I believe that there will be interest in the book.
Unë shpresoj që ky libër do të zgjojë interesim në Holland.
I hope this book will be interesting for people in the Netherlands.
Sepse këtu është gjykuar shkaktari I tragedive që përmendëm këtu.
Because here the person responsible for these tragedies was actually tried here.
Dhe besoj që në Hague dhe në Holland është domosdoshme të lexohen këto rrëfime që janë krejt të vërteta dhe të dihet se kush është shkaktar I luftës dhe I tragedisë.
And I believe that in The Hague and in the Netherlands, these books should be read because these are true stories, and everyone should know who's actually responsible for those wars and tragedies that happened at that time.
Ne dim se janë disa politikanë dhe ish ushtarak nga Kosova që mbahen në zonat speciale.
We know that at the moment there are several politicians and several military people from Kosovo that are being kept here at The Hague at the at the Kosovo Specialist Chambers.
Unë nuk I di gjitha akuzat për të cilat akuzohen.
I don't know all the allegations for which they are accused of.
Po njëra prej tyre më e përfolura është për shtëpinë e vet.
But one of the most talked about is about the so-called Yellow House,
Që është një fabrikim
which is a fabrication
nga niet manipulant Dick Martin.
From one manipulator named Dick Martin.
So I don't want to listen about the yellow house of fabricated by Dick Martin. I just want to see yellow house painted by Van Gogh. Mendoj se nuk është e nevojshme të flasim për këtë akuzë.
I believe that it's not necessary or it's not worthy to talk about those allegations.
Dhe mendoj se nëse këtu do të lexohet me vëmendje ky libër dhe mund të merren gjitha dëshmitë dhe të provohen që janë faktike.
And if this book is read carefully, this can serve as a proof of these statements that were given in the book, because these are factual facts. This is proof.
Do të shihet se kush është agresori dhe kush është viktima.
And in this book, you can see or realize who is the aggressor and who's the victim.
So do you think that there will be a political influence, for example, on the negotiations between Serbia and Kosovo? Seen from that point of view?
I don't know. The Hague is a scary name for us, Balkanian people. Mund të ketë një ndikim, nuk e di, nëse lexohet. Po nuk e di nëse gjyqtarët, prokurorët lexojnë kësaj libër.
It is possible to have some sort of influence if it's read, but I'm not sure whether the judges, prosecutors, etc. would read such books.
Edhe pse është përkthy shkëlqyer shumë nga.
Although it's marvelously translated by you.
Thank you for that. Richtig?
Ja, ik denk dat het alsnog goed afronden.
Oh, okay. Ju keni filluar dhe përfunduar romanit me you started and you ended with the word snow. What's the meaning of that?
është bora që në fillim dhe në fund të romanit, në fillim dhe në fund të fjalive. Bora si një... Unë kam marrë këtë koncept nga Thomas Eliot, Forgetful Snow. Është një borë harrimi që unë e përdora si element që kisha frikë se po harrohet kjo historia jo, që po mbulohet nga një borë harrimi.
It is the beginning of the book and the beginning of the first sentence of the book and the last sentence of the book that snow was mentioned. If this was a concept that I took from Thomas
Eliot.
Yes, Thomas Eliot.
T.S. Eliot.
T.S. Eliot.
Forgetful Snow.
From the book Forgetful Snow.
Concept.
Yeah. So basically the concept that he took from the book from T.S. Eliot, Forgetful Snow.
Dhe ishte kjo, domethënë, një formë e reagimit ndaj harresës që mund ta mbulojë këtë histori.
So this was a form of reaction towards the forgetfulness that this snow could have on that.
Pra është një roman kundër kësaj bore.
This is a novel against this snow of forgetfulness.
Het lijkt me een prima slot aan dit, want we moeten het programma even in de gaten houden. 5:30 begint het programma in een andere zaal. En ik wilde Ag bedanken, Sjoem van Bedeert, voor de toelichting op deze roman. En ik wil eigenlijk iedereen die hier aanwezig is in staat stellen om 1 exemplaar hier af te halen en dan een handtekening van Ag te bemachtigen. Dus dat is redelijk wat tijd mee. Dus ja.
Mogen we nog vragen stellen?
Nee, ik denk, want anders gaat het lang duren. Sorry Gerda, ja, maar dit gaat wel lang duren. Want ik wil iedereen in staat stellen om even persoonlijk een boek af te halen met Ag. Dus, en dan moeten we ons ook voorbereiden op de rest van het programma. So the program in the big hall starts in 20 minutes. And in these 20 minutes we still have time to get one free copy a person. And to get a signature, a special signature of Ag, and we need this time to facilitate this. Thank you very much again, and we hope to enjoy this book, although it's a dramatic book on a dramatic time. Thank you.